Greetings, one and all. Eric, Little Wasteland. We'll take a few minutes to let people roll in as usual. I feel like that's been working better lately. So if you are watching this after the fact, you can jump ahead 1 to 2 minutes and see if we're actually talking about good stuff. What's up, George Orwell? I was wondering if I would have enough to talk about, but obviously there's been some weird stuff happening last minute. I will mention very briefly, like I said, that I am trying to be more proactive with Patreon, specifically with giveaways. As you guys have heard me mention before, I don't like to talk about money grubbing too often, but the YouTube channel really doesn't make any money these days. And that's not why I do it, but I have to pay for the Zoom subscription to be able to do the live streams. I got to pay for PO box. I got to pay for hosting domains and small stuff like that. So it really doesn't make any money. And like I said, that's not why I do that, but it would be nice to at least not have to come out of pocket with some of that stuff, and also have an alternate place to post stuff that if something happens to the YouTube channel. And anyone who is a paid Patreon subscriber by the end of the month, the very early October, I'm going to do a giveaway for this Fox Edge FE520 knife, brand new, really cool blade shape, ergonomic handle, little attitude adjuster / window breaker on there. And you get more entries depending on the tier that you're in, but it starts as low as $1 a month. And I'll be giving away cool stuff at least once a month. I think this is like a $150 knife. So far, there's only like 5 or 6 people on there, so your odds are really good. I'm glad to see that we are live. And as always, check out rulethewasteland.com or on Amazon, survival fishing kits, deluxe and micro, which, as you guys have heard me mention, these are the only survival products that have a full apocalypse money back guarantee. Whereas if you buy a Rule the Wasteland survival fishing kit and you don't survive the apocalypse, I'll give you a full refund. Don't think about it too much, just buy it. All right, so we got 11 people watching now. We can go ahead. False flag. Are you referring to the events of today, or just the likelihood of being something happen? I don't even think that they're like going to have a false flag so much as there's just going to be escalations in the attempt at. I'm going to come out and say now that I don't buy the people who say that we won't have an election. I think that's too risky, unless you're of the camp that thinks that everything is absolutely controlled. They're both controlled opposite, then it doesn't matter. They control everything, doesn't matter what we do anyway, which I don't buy that. And for my viewpoint, even for the people who are, the powers that be, whoever that is, chaos is not the best bet because it's unpredictable. You know what I mean? So they don't necessarily want chaos. I've never bought that either. They want disruptions in certain areas that allow them to have power. But I think most of the time it's just them taking advantage of these things, not necessarily actively causing them. So I don't think that most of the people in power now would want like a complete collapse of the government or a social structure in the US just to prevent a free and fair election. I think they have other ways of trying to put their thumb on the scale, escalating, just to try and, with maybe trying to get a war to break out. That sort of thing makes sense. So we could see stuff like that. But the interesting thing is, apparently, and I saw this like less than half an hour ago, I started seeing headlines where I just opened my phone to look at something on Twitter, and the articles were like, Trump shooter or shooter identified as Ryan Ruth. And I'm like, that wasn't the guy's name. I was like, did they finally discover that there were 2 shooters or something? And then I'm like, wait, this is a new thing? So yeah, for those of you who haven't heard yet, apparently there was another attempted assassination of Trump. This time the guy did not get any shots off, but it was at a golf course in Florida. The guy's name was like Ryan Routh or Ryan Ruth. And he crept up to the edges of the golf course with an AK-47 with a scope on it. And luckily, Secret Service agent, probably not the same details last time, did see him. They opened fire on him. He initially escaped, and they were able to at some point track him down or chase him down on the highway and got him. But yeah, wild. And my first thoughts were obviously beyond the insanity of it all, is that an AK-47, well, certainly capable of shooting out to 300, 500 yards, 7.62 by 39 would not be my choice for going out 300 plus yards. Regulators a bit bigger, but these people are mentally deranged, so good. It's good that they're not. That's why people hate the right-wing extremists so much and always think that they're worse and more dangerous is just because they're more effective. They don't tend to have that like completely unhinged break from reality type of insanity. It's a focused insanity where they'll, hyper focus on some kind of issue or something, and that's what makes them scarier to most people. Could the chaos scare old people away from voting in person, which would benefit Democrats? Could be. I mean, I think there's enough options now for voting by mail and voting early that shouldn't be a problem unless you're in weird downtown cities or something. Like there's places all. It could though, if they try to convince people that there's violence happening to people at the polls, maybe the old people won't go down there. I don't know, but I haven't seen anything necessarily to suggest that. And really, this election is going to come down to like Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, the big one, maybe Georgia, although I don't think Georgia's nearly as purple right now as they claim. Florida's off the table now for the Democrats. In Texas, I don't buy that. Like, obviously, there's a lot of immigration and stuff in Texas, but I think the big ones are obviously a couple of the Rust Belt states up there, like Pennsylvania, and then like Nevada and maybe Arizona, stuff like that, that are going to tell the tale. And what's interesting is, if you guys had watched the debate, which I could only stomach about half of it, it was so boring, but to see the Harris campaign have to move so far center to where they're, not even center, but to tout that they're being endorsed by Cheney and Romney, and to say we support fracking, I own guns, like that should be a massive white pill. Like they are not winning on their platforms if they're having to do that and copy all Trump's tip things and tax plans, saying, no, we support small. I was like, what a great Republican Harris, or 90s Republican Harris is. She's pro fracking, pro small business, owns a gun, like great. Like, what do we need you for? Just vote for the Republicans anyway. So I don't think people are going to fall for that. But it does show, like I said, they are worried about, they're desperately trying to say that they're like pro fracking and everything, despite all their comments in the past that they'd absolutely ban it and everything, which is good for a good sign because that's a big deal in like Pennsylvania and some of these West Coast states. Let's go Florida, baby. Yeah, Florida. That's had a massive disparity in the amount of like registered Republicans in the past few years versus registered Democrats. Despite his goofiness and his poorly run campaign, Ron DeSantis has been doing a good job as governor. I think he should keep doing that. And I don't think it's on the table for them at all anymore. So a lot of good stuff there. And as far as Florida Gators, they have been sucking. But I put my wager on Texas A&M yesterday so that I could either win money or that the Gators would win. Of course, I won them. Hello again from Algeria, Ahmed. Good to see you. But yeah, we don't know too much else about the Trump assassin, new Trump assassin that attempted to actually didn't get a shot off today, other than was like based on his posts and stuff. He's obviously leftist and stuff like that. But yeah, we're still out here ruling the wasteland, doing our best. So the next up is, I've been buying gold pay dirt, kind of having a blast. Oh, that's cool. I've seen that. For those of you guys who don't know, the gold pay dirt is like just a bunch of actual dirt from areas that you could potentially do gold mining, and then you can like sift through the gold, pan for it, whatever you want to do to try to get actual gold, which is pretty cool. Looks like fun. But I just get my money from playing poker and selling junk and then go buy it. And I do not give financial advice. So this is not a financial advice. This is a plead, an entreaty to you guys. Get your money out of the debt-based fiat system. We are running out of time. Gold is at all-time high. Silver cracked 31. The stocks have not yet caught up. We could see a huge move in gold and silver stocks potentially, especially after they lower rates coming up between now and the end of the year. It could get weird. Like Conan's dad said, can't trust men or beasts. This you can trust. Forged in the heart of a dying star, like I like saying. Doesn't tarnish. Lasts forever. Limited supply. But you only have $500 to your name. Don't bother spending it on gold and silver. Spend it on getting ready. And like the video I recently made about the poor man's guide to nuclear preparedness. You only have 500 bucks to your name. I outlined some basic preparation, the most essential basic preparations and planning you can do for as little as $50 to $150 to give yourself a really good shot at surviving any kind of nuclear war type scenario, nuclear detonation type scenario, which I don't necessarily think is likely here in the US, but it's absolutely possible. And I do think it's fairly likely that we see some nuke go off in some capacity somewhere in the world within the next 5 years or so. I think that's over the 50% threshold, especially if you include tests done as a demonstration, you know what I mean, by any country. At this point, I might have to wager that it's more likely that the US or Israel are the ones to set one off first before Russia, China, North Korea. As crazy as North Korea is, they are absolutely a puppet of China when it comes down to big decisions like that. And they are completely reliant. There's no way they would even be able to exist still if it wasn't for the at least tacit support of China, tolerance of China. So they're not going to do anything. Cut off the train by like just nuking North Korea unless it's already sanctioned. Nuking South Korea unless it's already sanctioned. Has to sell 5 ounces for a horse. Oh man. Well, if you need the horse, you need the horse. Real. That's what this is. This is just money. If you need to spend your money on something that you need, go for it. If I had to buy a horse, I would have 5 buffaloes back. At least you had the 5 buffaloes. It's an expensive horse. I don't know anything about horses, but a horse is that expensive? Jesus. 5 buffaloes? It's like 10 grand. Just a big walking meat thing. I mean, I know like racehorses can be millions, but I have no idea what horses cost. Get a car. But hopefully got what you needed. And like I said, great that you had it. And that's how I think this gold and silver should be treated. It's not as somewhere that you put your money. This is your money until you need something else. If you want to temporarily invest that money in something else like stocks or whatever, or spend it. Do you trust the election will be free and fair? No. In fact, I don't think we've had a completely free and fair election in my lifetime. The question is, to what extent will there be shenanigans, and are they enough to? I don't think that there is, at least until this time, even in 2016, there wasn't like a massive coordinated, very structured cheating mechanism of any kind. I mean, we have people coming up with fake pipe blowing out stories and putting cardboard on the windows and stuff like this. Isn't a very sophisticated. It was a panic move that they had seen the opportunity for specifically because of the COVID-related mail ballots and everything, which they probably did on purpose. But so there's all sorts of shenanigans, and there will be some this time. There's going to be ballot harvesting. In some jurisdictions, the ballot harvesting has actually been ensconced and enshrined into law in the way that's not even illegal in a lot of capacities. So yeah, we're going to see that stuff. At this point, like I mentioned earlier, with the Harris campaign basically pretending to be a Bush era Republican platform, that's a good sign. That means that they see that that's what's needed to really get actual real votes, which doesn't bode well for them. And she's awfully unlikable. She bombed her first solo interview, and even when they're completely, I don't even want to say friendly, they're supporters. They're active. The mainstream news media could be considered the Harris campaign for the most part, and she still can't get a good interview off without, and even in the one that was pre-recorded, they were like leading the witness in the way. And even in the interview, the very few things they brought up that could be considered remotely critical, like her flip-flopping positions, they even gave her the answer. They're like, so we know you've said that your values haven't changed. Like they just give her the answer, but you have flip-flopping these positions. So what's the deal? And she's like, right, my values haven't changed. Whatever the fuck that means. And like, I actually agree with her. Her values have not changed. Her words have changed because she wants votes. But her values are that she is one of the most left-wing people in the House or Senate when she was there. And she's an awful, awful person. The riddle of steel. Yep. Lucky for us, the gods forgot the riddle of steel and left it on the battlefield so that us men could acquire it. Do you understand why longer bullets have to have faster rifling twist rates in order to be stabilized in flight? Why do you bring up ballistics and bullets in every fucking video or live stream? If I have a video about ammo, feel free. I'm talking about something completely unrelated. But I do think that we will see big moves in gold and silver. I don't know. Gregory Mannarino has been talking about how he thinks that there is a likelihood of, not that he's predicting it, but he's saying stand back and wait kind of for the next few days until we see what happens after this rate cut, because we don't know if they're going to do a quarter point, half a point. We don't know to what extent it's priced in. We know it's priced in, which may actually make the stock market go down after that, because while continued printing and lowering of rates is good for the nominal values of stocks, it's a concession that things are not going well. And so that it depends on to what extent the euphoria aspect of it is baked in and to what extent they'll go the other direction. So we could actually see it cause a stock market short-term correction. We know long-term the printing press is coming off. That's my most highest conviction prediction of all time, which is why we know that real assets, and that includes ammo, food, medicine, real estate, especially agriculturally productive real estate, all sorts of things. Answer the real steel is that the steel is nothing but the armed wheel. Well, it depends. I mean, that is Thulsidim's answer is what steel compared to the hand, the wheels. Think steel is strong, flesh is stronger. But there's the actual, when Conan's dad is talking to him, I think he's referring to the literal process of making steel versus iron, which is why Thulsidim sought steel. It's difficult to make. There's a process, enigma. But yeah, then later in the movie, we talk about the riddle of steel being philosophically being the fact that it's nothing without humans to use it. Peter Shifty and Gerald Salente Trends Journal. Yeah, Salente is great. I like Peter Schiff overall in general. I think he is a little bit of a hater of Bitcoin and doesn't apply kind of equal logic to it, because I am as pro gold as you can get. That doesn't require you to be anti-Bitcoin. I see the potential downsides of both, but you can't argue with what's happened with Bitcoin and what will probably happen just because it's not net physically existing or will have some eventually go to zero at some point in the future. You know, there are scenarios where gold is useless, at least in the short term, in a small localized area or something like that. So you don't have to choose. But Peter Schiff in general has been very good. Jared Salente has been extremely accurate with his predictions. Before the dollar crashes, do you think it's wise to put a few bucks in various digital coin? Just a thought. I have said for a long time on pretty much all my live streams that I absolutely think that in most dollar crash scenarios that do not result in a complete, you know, like the Patriots novel, complete collapse of the economy, which I don't think will happen. But in most dollar collapse scenarios, almost everything is going to go up in nominal terms. It is not directly related to the dollar and doesn't have extreme counterparty risk. And I've said that there's a lot more people in the US, especially my age cohort and younger, that have more experience and comfort with buying crypto coins than they do with buying physical gold and silver. And there is not enough physical gold and silver. When it really gets to that point where people say, I have to get something other than dollars, what am I going to get? Stock market stuff's all going to go through the roof. Maybe not the US stock market, though, if it's too linked to the dollars. Gold and silver are going to evaporate and overnight, and I mean overnight. There will be a 48-hour period probably. But the inventory that these physical brokers have, it's nothing. Like it's maybe a few billion dollars if you put them all together. And when the money starts actually fleeing the debt market, that is a 24-hour liquidation event. So what's going to happen? People who already have Coinbase accounts, and there's no limit to how much like Bitcoin, can't like buy up all the Bitcoin. The price will just go massively through the roof. and or not specifically Bitcoin, but all currencies, and then people just drop down to the next one. Bitcoin is people aren't selling that, and it's at $1 million, and people will go to Ethereum, and when that's unaffordable to them, they'll go to Litecoin, or they'll go to Monero, or they'll go to any of the other host of cryptos that are out there, and some of them will just spike super quick, instantly liquidate. So there'll be a lot of chaos. I wouldn't trust any other than the top two, maybe three. I would stick with Ethereum and Bitcoin. I'm not an expert in these. I just know that there will be a shitload of money. It'll be the off ramp for the gold and silver when it's no longer become available. People say, I have to get out of dollars. There literally is no physical gold and silver available. I've already bought crypto. I understand it to some extent. This isn't me talking. This is the other millennials and younger. And so they're going to put their money in that. And we already know there's a lot of institutions, even governments like El Salvador, that have set up transactional channels for Bitcoin, companies that take Bitcoin for payment. So they already have a method for buying and selling it. So yeah, I absolutely think crypto will go up. I think there are more scenarios, a lot more scenarios, where you could potentially get wiped out with crypto than with gold and silver. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad place to have some of your money. I think the crypto maximalists are in a much riskier position. And especially when you're talking from a preparedness perspective of, I got to run across the border, bribe a border guard, hide this stuff in my pants, use it anywhere in the world with nothing to my name other than this, then yeah, that has more availability or more utility to me. But there's tons of scenarios. Like I said, it's a huge mistake that preppers frequently make to look only at the worst case scenarios and not at the entire range of possible scenarios, and especially the more likely scenarios. And it's much more likely that the economy just goes to shit, but doesn't absolutely grid down collapse. I would not touch any crypto with a 10-foot pole. I understand the perspective, but like I said, I think there will be, I have very, very little, and I don't plan on putting a whole host of money into it. But I would, if I won the lottery, I would absolutely put a decent chunk in it to spread out, because I do think there's a much more I think there's more chance of it going to zero, any money you put in crypto, but I think there's also a much higher chance of it 10xing or 100xing than with gold necessarily. Gold's going to go up, but I don't think it's going to 100 or 1000x, other than like in a Weimar scenario where everything does. Whereas crypto absolutely could experience insane price hikes like that. Platinum's cool. It's much more of an industrial metal, and it's doesn't track a lot of things very predictably. Do you think the Fed will print coin to fix government debt? No, I don't think so, because that doesn't solve their issue. Because then they have they need continued money. Their only choices are continued money expansion or money evaporation and complete financial system freeze up. You can't do it like half and half. So if they pay off the debt with a coin, a platinum $1 trillion, $20 trillion platinum coin, or whatever, that just is that's the second choice. Like disappearing the money, it doesn't actually fix their issue. They have no flexibility. They have no more. Now, where are they getting this new money to finance their ongoing operations? They spent something like, I don't even remember what the number was, some insane number of billions in just the last month alone. We're rapidly passing military spending with just the debt payments alone. Like, it's just, there is no way they can undo that. So the only way out for them where they don't instantly lose power is just to keep inflating. I don't think, somebody says, I'm considering platinum. Government is likely to push down the price of gold if they can, of course. So I bet platinum for now, gold is high risk. I don't agree with that. I think that platinum is probably higher risk. And risk is that I'm saying here is very relative, because these are all real assets. So they're not going to go to zero. I'm talking about a risk of you losing purchasing power versus gaining it. Platinum's certainly a good thing to have, but it's much more value based on industrial applications than it is for currency stuff. But there are so many people, governments, and central banks, Russia even, is just like insanely increasing the amount of gold they're buying over the next month. Like, I don't think that it's possible for the government to actually push down the price of gold. They can do a lot of machinations and legal flim flams and restrictions, kind of like price controls to within the country to say you can't sell gold for more than $1,000 an ounce here, but that doesn't make the gold worth less. You just have to either sit on it or leave the country, like what already happened in the US, where they're like, turn it in. And then when you do, then the price goes up. So they can't really control the value of gold. They can, to some extent, maybe attempt to control the transactions price of gold within the country in official government capacities or in businesses and stuff like that. But we know that price controls don't work. It just creates black market. So I don't think that there's a higher risk for gold. If you're worried about it, you could go the whole pre-1933 gold that's viewed as collectibles. But I don't think it's ever really that meaningful to base your preparations on what the rules are now that the government is giving you, because we know that they'll just flip the table over whenever you start winning. So I think you should make your decisions based on what's the most resilient choice, what gives you the most options, or the best ability to just work outside any of their rules, than to try and predict what new bullshit rule they're going to come up with. There's plenty of gold. The price, yeah, nationally, but there's not plenty of gold. There's plenty of gold to back a currency or whatever. It just affects the price. There's not plenty of gold for everyone in the country to invest 10% in their gold. I mean, because no one's going to sell it to them. Ever heard of Raoul Pal? His prediction is a melt up that goes mostly in stocks and no hyperinflation, but high inflation to switch to AI and UBI, but shitty UBI barely surviving. Yeah, I mean, that's what would happen, I think, with UBI. They're not going to, you can't have a situation where everyone is above average, obviously, purchasing power. I'll have to look it up because I don't know about specific predictions, but that makes sense to me. But you can't really, if the melt up goes mostly, I mean, we're already seeing the melt up in everything else too. It's just slow in the groceries. And if it goes all into stocks, like that's a lot of money out there. And that means that a lot of people have a lot of money now, whether that's institutions or individuals. A record number of actual private individuals have their money in the stock market right now. So if the stock market goes through the roof, more people have more money, which means things are going to be driven up, whether that's housing and real estate, whether that's used vehicles like we're seeing. Like the money going into the stock market isn't restricting the velocity. The only way you can have like a hyperinflation that doesn't affect prices in general is by controlling the money velocity, where it's limited to either government institutions or big businesses and stuff like that, which is what we've seen for many years. Is that a lot of this money that's been created, like with 2008 and stuff, is going to big bailouts, and there's like the Cantillon effect where they get the benefit of this initial money, and then the inflation happens much farther down the road. But if the money's all going into the markets, they can't necessarily do that unless private people don't own stocks at all. Right, I agree that gold can't vanish in a flash as crypto has. I mean, Bitcoin has never vanished in a flash. Ethereum has never vanished in a flash. We've had price plummets, but right, there are definitely scenarios under which crypto is just suddenly worthless. There are no realistic scenarios under which gold is just instantly worthless. There are scenarios where it will be more or less purchasing power, but that doesn't mean that you can't potentially make a shitload of money in crypto. But I personally would just not put a huge percentage of my net worth in there. I think putting decent money in there, because there's such a high likelihood that we'll see a massive spike when that inflationary cycle really kicks off. I mean, we're going to see gold spike then too. But because people won't necessarily be selling it, the people might kind of give up on trying to buy it, which will keep the price at from going completely stratospheric. But that won't necessarily be the case with just crypto in general. And they're both small markets, so like obviously they're all going to go up. But I don't think it's a bad idea to diversify in any extent. Food, water, shelter, medicine, and immune self-defense prepared mind. Couldn't agree more. So Raoul Paul thinks we have high inflation, but not hyperinflation. Yeah, I mean, that's valid. To me, it just considers the consideration for me is what happens when the dollar goes to zero. That's not necessarily going to manifest as insanely high prices, depending on how quickly it happens. Like in Weimar, Germany, they're creating all this money. There's a period of several years, at least like a year and a half, 2 years, where they're just making money, and everything's going up in prices, and they're making more money, and things are trillions of dollars, like Zimbabwe. Not every financial system can can really bear that kind of hyperinflation. It may just be overnight the currency goes to zero and is no longer accepted. And that is kind of the same as hyperinflation, but not really. If it takes $20 trillion to buy a potato, or no one will give you a potato at all for any amount of money, that's not a huge difference. But the difference is that in the latter scenario, where dollars aren't accepted at all anymore, is that it forces them to move to a new system. And I kind of think that's what we're going to see, is that we'll have a very brief, probably a year or less, where the dollar is just no longer accepted. Maybe 2 years or something. And that'll be like the hyperinflation. They'll have to print amount of money, but they'll realize pretty quickly, and it can happen so much more quickly now because digital. Before, when people had to physically print the money, physically carry the money, that slows down how fast hyperinflation can really occur. When it's digital and they can just print a quadrillion dollars in an instant, then that will cause that process to play out much more quickly and thus die much more quickly and force them to move to something else much more quickly. So I think there'll be a very brief period of significant inflation where the dollar dies, no longer accepted, and they're forced to move to something else. I have no idea what that something else will be. I think internationally it'll be commodity backed, maybe not specifically gold, probably a basket. We see a lot of international central banks and countries are vastly increasing their gold supply, so they know it's a good thing to have. Government push it down more than half. Yeah, there's definitely some theories about there not being nearly as much gold in Fort Knox as they say. I think an alternate theory is that they have much more than they say and don't want the world to know. I don't see them being that responsible, even in a sleazy or, subterfuge kind of way. But if they were wise, they would be slowly accumulating it, like all these other countries are, in secret, because these Nobel Prize winning economists and intelligent people should know just as well as me that the dollar is eventually going to die. So if they were smart, they would be accumulating vast quantities of it. But if they want to do that, they could store it somewhere else and still do the audit. So yeah, I tend to agree that they don't have nearly as much. The way that they're emptying the strategic oil reserve and everything else they do indicates that they're willing to, give up a lot of resources for short-term gain. So I think that, yeah, they probably have nowhere near as much gold as they're supposed to. Yeah, it's a big distiller. It's a big IOU, like in Dumb and Dumber. He's like, you're going to want to hang on to that one. That's for 20 trillion in gold. And you're going to want to keep that IOU. I'm sitting pretty, to be honest. I did get in the right time and a smart with the money 10 years ago. Awesome, man. Glad to hear it. That puts you in a fantastic position to not only survive what's coming, but to potentially profit greatly from it. Because like I said, there's going to be a lot of, anytime there's this much chaos, there's opportunity for incongruencies and arbitrages and stuff like that, where people are making unintelligent decisions. They're making them quickly. They're making them out of desperation, including governments. And that creates a lot of opportunities if you have the resources there to prepare. I saw it coming back in 2015. I was 25. Good. Uncommon impressions for 25-year-old. I was also 25, 26. No. What am I thinking? It's 30. Why can't I do that? Yeah, 2015 was like 10 years ago. So I wrote a book and let it go for a lump sum of 4K. If I got my royalties at oh shit. Damn, well that's too bad. So there's an interesting thing that's moving along completely unrelated. True. Nobody has crystal ball. There's this is totally unrelated, but it's kind of funny. There's apparently this AI like chat bot that is supposed to take people and like convince them that they're wrong about conspiracy theories. So I call it like the gaslighting bot. And it's supposed to be actually good at it. It actually works. And I think that that's probably the case for some of these more bizarre conspiracy theories. But in general, the flaw that conspiracy theorists make logically is just the opposite side of the coin from the same flaw that the people who disregard all conspiracy theories are making. And that's that kind of along the lines of like an absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, that kind of thing. And to where having unconfirmed reports or information for something doesn't mean that it's false, just means that it hasn't been proven yet. And confusing evidence with proof and things like that. So one of the examples I use is that conspiracy theorists, the mistake that they make a lot of times is they correctly identify an area where there is obvious subterfuge or mistruths or anything. They're very good at pointing out what's not true. They're very bad at replacing that with an alternate theory. So the example I use is the fact that all these countries, and this is true, that all these countries have agreed to these treaties to like not go into the Arctic and not fly over the Arctic, and they blame it on like the migratory patterns of penguins, which is obviously horseshit. But the mistake is then saying like, see, that proves that there's Nazi bases in Hollow Earth or whatever other theories. I'm like, what? That's quite a leap. So I mean, you can believe whatever you want, but my point is that you can recognize that something is bullshit and is not the real story without having to replace it with anything necessarily, and specifically not with something as extreme as some of these theories. And but that's the conspiracy haters do the opposite and say because there is no, or because this replacement idea is extreme and wrong, that means that there's nothing weird or wrong about what we're being told, which you just have to have a room temperature IQ to see that, and a brief cursory glance at history to realize that the official stories are not even in a single instance ever in history been the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yeah, maybe it's Nazi penguins, migratory Nazi penguins. They've infected them with Nazism. So I'm going to fight the chatbot and I'm going to defeat it. I'm going to convince this chatbot to become a conspiracy theorist and promote them instead of trying to convince them. So I'm going to beat it. I have that much unexplained confidence in myself. But which is funny because I don't actually believe a lot of these conspiracy theories at the far end. I just realize that the official stories are bullshit. And so I have a good opening salvo that I can't tell you because I don't want someone else to go do it before me. But I'm going to defeat this chatbot. So the voodoo crap from Haiti is wild. Yeah, that's kind of a good example of exactly what I'm talking about, because they take the unconfirmed reports or allegations and then use that to say false. So when Trump said they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, there have been allegations and reports of the Haitians in these, or immigrants in Springfield and other places, eating pets, eating the ducks at the pond, eating the dogs, whatever. That doesn't mean that it's false. It means it's they said that is false because the city director said so. So like, okay, you have a testimonial evidence of one dude. We have testimonial evidence of several random people. It's unconfirmed allegations. That doesn't mean it's false. It doesn't mean it's true. It means we've heard reports of this. It definitely doesn't seem to be a actual widespread endemic thing that is happening. I don't know why it seems so unrealistic, but I think the good thing about that is people. I had a friend telling me they're like, "Oh, this is his Howard Dean screen moment." Like, oh, we're just going to tank his whole campaign because it's so ridiculous. And I'm like, no. The people who think that are already the orange man bad Trump derangement syndrome haters. The Trump supporters think it's hilarious and are making all these memes about it. And everyone else is just like, what? And you know what they do when they says that? They go online and they go, Springfield, Ohio, Haitians. And you know what they see? They may not see proof of someone eating a cat specifically, but they see this NYC woman from 2 years ago cooking guinea pigs in the street. They see the insane crime rates. They see the fact that 20,000 people have been dumped into a city of 60,000 and are getting all sorts of benefits and government assistance that the locals who have been struggling the whole time are not. Do you think they really come away from that being like, what an idiot, Trump saying they're eating cats, when there is some reports of that and may or may not be true? No. So I think if anything, for rational people who don't already hate Trump, it gets them looking at the issue. And it doesn't appear to be something that is happening all over the place. I would, if I had a crystal ball that could prove it, I would definitely bet money that people in the U.S., an immigrant in the U.S. has eaten a cat or a dog at some point. But again, it's not something that's happening like all over the place. But what is happening all over the place is mass illegal immigration being dumped onto these small towns and causing insane changes. Appreciate it, NC Farmer. Lincoln says, I live near where a homeless encampment was. Things look different when you see these homeless people regularly. In what way? Expand. Are you saying it's what has changed your mind by seeing it regularly? Can't believe Trump is still alive. Yeah, I mean, they don't want it. I definitely think he should have picked someone a little more extreme for VP, as if he does get elected, for assassination insurance, like Alex Jones or something, or even Thomas Massey, or even Rand Paul, someone whose actual policy positions are more extreme than Trump. And that's what the hilarious thing that I've been pointing out for years is that on paper, Trump's policy positions are so non-extreme that people just hate him. And they can't, all these Trump haters, it's so hard for them to point out what is actually so dangerous about Trump to their worldview, other than the threat to democracy, orange man bad, to, like just pablum that comes spewing out when you can see them like hit that, like spewing the talking points, and they're not actually evaluating the issue. They're just like, oh my god, it's so bad, the US can't survive a Trump like he was president, you dumb bitch. Like, where are you getting this information? Do you just not remember living through how was your life tremendously impacted specifically? Oh, Trump hates Massey. Yeah, because he doesn't kiss the ring. Trump is like that. He will not like anybody that doesn't kiss the ring. And unfortunately, one of his biggest downfalls is if you're just a sleazy politician who doesn't mind debasing yourself for advancement, and you're willing to kiss the ring, bend the knee, so to speak, but not actually change it all, then he'll let you into the fold. And that was the biggest problem with his first administration, is all these craven politicians who don't care about, they don't have that kind of personal pride. They'll, be like, oh, Mr. Trump, I love you. And then as soon as they get in, they just do whatever they were going to do anyway. Then they get fired, write a book about how bad the presidency was and everything. And so that's one of his biggest flaws. PBS did a whole hour-long story on how great it was for Haitians who were in Springfield. Yeah, exactly. So we're already so we've gone from this isn't happening to it is happening, or it might be happening, and then it is happening, and here's why it's good, kind of thing. And you're a bigot for thinking otherwise. Absolutely atrocious. I'll take the Interstream break here, for those of you who weren't at the beginning, to mention once again that on my Patreon, for paid as little as $1 a month, anyone who signs up before the end of September will be entered into the contest to win this brand new Fox Edge FE520 knife, a nice, cool blade with a nice big belly on it, nice ergonomic handle, and a little attitude adjuster / window breaker on there. And I'll be giving away prizes every month, at least every month on the Patreon. And I think there's only 5 or 6 paid people on there right now, so your chances are extremely good. Next up, I think we have a cool like solar radio and some other stuff like that. I'm sure I'll occasionally be throwing in some Ruler Wasteland survival fishing kits, but this knife is worth about $150, I think. So jump on there and sign up. Link will be in the description to all my most recent videos. You think he has learned a lesson on who to surround himself with? I hope, but I don't see strong evidence of that. I hope that these assassination attempts and the weaponized justice system have imprinted on him the severity and the stakes. Craziest fight you got in outside of war, if you can talk about it, any lesson from it? That's a good question. I'll have to think about that. I haven't gotten in many physical altercations outside of the gym. I mentioned the one where I almost got in a shootout with the guy over the crazy dude over masks. But yeah, haven't had anything too crazy luckily happen. There's a bum I almost had to fight when we first moved out here, but he didn't want the smoke and eventually left. That sort of thing. So I'll think about it and see if I can come up with anything that's been. But for the most part, I avoid situations where I don't escalate. You know what I mean? DC swamp is so bad. Not even alligators here in Florida don't want to go. Yeah, it's too toxic. Swamp gators. All right, what else we got on here? That's about all I got. So I'll open up the live stream to any last minute questions. Appreciate you guys watching. If you could take a brief moment, gently click. I'm not about smashing the like button. Just click it, A little diddle. Let's go ahead and diddle my like button. Works much better. I just want to jackhammer every time. No. Just go ahead and hit that like button. We get 68 watching now. It's pretty good. And if you haven't seen my two most recent videos, I think they're pretty good. And they're doing fairly well. And I would check if you don't have the Opus Power Station. I think they're still in the period. I'm going to make a video this week, probably not today, or probably not out tomorrow, but this week about how I'm protecting those devices pretty easily and cheaply from potential EMP in a way that you can access them more easily than just taping everything up in aluminum foil. Trump needs more security SEAL Team 6 members. In this case, at least they saw the guy before he got a shot off, and he was hundreds of yards away. He was much farther away than the guy was in Pennsylvania. It was not even an event. You know, it was a private thing, so there was probably less security. Appreciate it, John, for the thumbs up every time. And so I can't really blame them this time. It is disconcerting that he was still able to even get that close with a scoped rifle. But they at least got him before he got a shot off. I think he needs to just take a break from a lot of non-essential public appearances for the time being. He did apparently. Oh, I mean, they shot at him. I don't think the guy shot at Trump. I think but correct me if I'm wrong or post a link, but I don't think he got a shot off at Trump. From what I saw, a Secret Service agent saw the guy rifle poking out of a fence, went over there, exchanged fire with the guy. So it's between him and a Secret Service agent. Who puts a scope on an AK? But that's what I literally said. I don't know if you're here for the beginning of the live stream, but I said if I was going to take a multi-100-yard shot, an AK-47 would not be the rifle to use it. First of all, they're not particularly accurate as far as rifles go. They're accurate enough. You can do whatever you need to for the most part. But just a 7.62 by 39 for a 300 to 500-yard shot, I would definitely go with 308, 300 Winchester mag, the Pua, something like that. But I'm no expert. I'm a terrible shot, by my own standards at least. Should I go to Alaska or Russia if Molly gets elected? I don't recommend Russia. They're likely to get nuked by us. Alaska's expensive. I recommend like Western Tennessee or something in the boondocks. Or another country. Costa Rica, a lot of expats like that. Uruguay, something like that. Trump has more lives than a Springfield cat. I hope so. He's already used a couple of them between the court cases and the assassination attempts and everything else. If the guy was derpy enough to use an AK, he probably wasn't as sharp on IT security. And we're going to find out how he got Trump's schedule. That was my first question. Is that how do these maniacs even know exactly where to go? You know what I mean? That's the most disconcerting part. Right. So I'm sure he's not an IT expert. So we'll see if the FBI is already scrubbing his computer. I'm sure. But definitely not good. Not good. Trump protection team needs to invent ballistic blankets. I mean, they need to just keep him out of being out in public, with the exception of very secure rallies and official events. I've leveled SPQR says I've leveled up my prepper status. Sandpoint well successfully installed, 5+ gallons a minute. Awesome. Of course, I don't even have to ask. I know you have a non-electric hand pump, or at least you're going to get one. And that's the great thing about the Sandpoint wells is because they're so shallow. You don't need really expensive pumps. Hand pumps work great most of the time, especially when the water table's low. I mean, you can have electric pumps are great, and I would recommend one, but backup hand pumps always. And in an emergency situation when you're in somewhere in coastal, and you're Florida, Gulf Coast, Louisiana, so a lot of these areas like that, you could literally just, in an emergency, just grab a shovel and dig a 6 or 10-foot hole. Even if it takes all day, you will have water in the bottom of this 10 or 12-foot hole. So make sure you at least have some tools like that. Out here, I think the water table is like 300 feet deep through rock and everything else. Not an option. Lindsey Graham canceled his golf outing with Trump right before. Ooh, I wonder if that's true. That would be very interesting. Yep, Teflon Don still marches on. And it's insane that we are so close to the election, and yet so far, and are likely to see even more insane nonsense like this, especially with regards to the economy and the global World War III situation. What I'm looking big thing next few days. When is the Fed meeting? Monday, tomorrow for the rates? Watch out. Sit on your cash for now. Let's see what happens with the markets and with gold. And just be ready, guys. Be ready for, especially for financial or global war escalatory type things. So, yeah, correct depth to water table in a lot of areas near the coast is water of like 5 to 10 feet. Yeah, and I think if you're near the coast, that's a video I have on my ideas list, is for people who are actually on the coast, specific things that you should be getting. Because in a lot of areas, Florida and Gulf Coast and stuff probably being an exception. But if you're like out on California coast or something like that, there's water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, as the man says. Make up 5 points to whoever tell me what that's from. And so distillation type thing, equipment is a big thing to get, and actually not that expensive. Road preparedness, it's energy intensive, not that expensive. I'm going to try to look around to find some good, no one makes a good solar distillation type thing that's not very expensive. Most of them are designed for like lifeboats and stuff like that. I think it would be fairly easy, maybe not trivial, but I definitely think it would not be that hard to rig up a solar distillation unit. It's kind of like a sun oven, but specifically designed to distill salt water. Just leave it outside all the time, put fresh water or put salt water in it. I think that would be relatively, and I'm going to try to build one of those. But in the meantime, if you have an energy source, specifically like wood or a way to make fire, a stovetop distillation unit, you can get them for like 80 to 150 bucks on Amazon for some pretty solid ones to distill salt water. So that's what I would recommend if you're near the coast. Filters that can filter salt water are very expensive. The filters don't last long. So distillation is a much better option, especially if it's solar. It doesn't use a massive amount of energy. You ever just put water in an existing solar oven? I don't know how you condense it though. Yeah, and that's kind of my idea, is that the only thing you have to change, and yes, you can, because that's a good way to pasteurize water. It won't come to a boil, but you get it well over the temperatures needed to kill bacteria, and you just leave it in there for while. And the sun oven actually has a little wax kind of floating temperature gauge that when the wax, it's a specific type of wax that when it melts, you know it's been hot enough, long enough to pasteurize the water. So that works for killing bacteria. For distilling it, all you would need to do is basically make a sun oven, but just have it such that the roof, the clear glass roof, is designed to, at an angle, to condense and collect. And I wouldn't even make the, what I have in mind is kind of like a sun oven that has an area for the vapor to go up. So you have the glass where the sun's coming in, and then in a secondary shaded area, the vapor will go up into a condenser, exactly like with a regular like moonshine distillation unit, like the ones I was talking about. I think if you just rig up a sun oven with a pipe going into a copper coil, and then you put a pot of water in there, that might work fairly well. And it doesn't have to work extremely well if it's something that you can literally just sit in your backyard 24/7 and occasionally top off with salt water. It wouldn't have to be super efficient. You could make it really big shallow pan of water. I think that I haven't even looked on YouTube. I bet someone has done this. Someone has to have done this. And I don't think it's unreasonable to easily get like a liter a day out of some contraption like that with almost no work other than walking out. Especially if you occasionally have a way to like have an interior wiper that like gets all the water to drip off, or, you know, like a real condenser with the copper and everything like that. What's the canary in the coal mine where you're looking for market-wise? It's so hard because there are so many elements that could fail. Like I always use the example of the bridge that's built badly and we know it's going to fail. And we're saying, we know this was built with inferior materials. what's the canary in the coal mine? And like, well, the canary in the coal mine is the fact that this was built substandard. And you're asking like, how are we going to know when it starts falling? It's like, when it starts falling. I mean, that board might crack, that nut might shear off, that suspension cable might rust out and rip off. Truck that's way too heavy for these inferior materials may go over the bridge. If it's left alone, it may last a lot longer. If a lot of traffic goes over, it'll happen quicker. So that's kind of we could see it happen in the currency markets. We could see it happen in the global debt markets. We could see it happen with the stock market here first, international with the yen carry trade falling apart. Like it's impossible to know. So I think we just have to be ready for it. Because eventually the money's just going to flee the debt market. I don't know enough to really pick an indicator. I think Gregory Manarino's MMRI is about as close as you're going to get. His Manarino market risk indicator, which just shows, when it starts to get over 300, you're seeing that it's basically going from risk on to risk off. But that's only that's based on people's actions too. So if the markets in general and all these investors aren't even ready for something happening, then that's not going to be reflected in. But the bond yield's probably the closest thing. That's what I would say. When the bond yields start going crazy, that's when, like he always is talking about, that's when we can probably think that something is going to. When the money is really fleeing the debt market, that's going to be the biggest indicator. But there's so many other black swans that could cause this stuff to happen from different angles than within the financial system that could happen first. Yeah, you can make, John Deese is a large sheet of plastic hanging outside, collect water at night. The classic example in all the, SAS survival manuals and all these wilderness survival manuals is simply a hole in the dirt with a sheet of plastic with a rock in the middle of it, with your collection thing in the middle and your water that needs to be filtered on the edges. So rigging up something like that, like I said, even something like that should give you some water. And I feel like if you could build a device that's specifically designed to do that, it would work a hell of a lot more efficiently. Because that type of solar still, like in the ground solar still with a sheet of plastic, you're not going to get more than like a cup of water a day, enough to sustain your life potentially in a disaster scenario. But we're talking about like if you're at a beachfront property or very near the beach or a coast somewhere, or a big saltwater inlet or something, brackish water, and you have an almost endless supply of salt water and you want to make as much fresh water as you can out of that. What's the most effective kind of passive solar distillation unit that you could develop? Let's look that up. Let's say solar distillation. See what we can come up with. So yeah, I've seen these floating ones. And like I said, those are made for life rafts. And in fact, I read a book about the guy who supposedly had the record for the longest time spent alive adrift on a life raft at like 160 days or something like that, 180 days. And he was sustained, that saved his life, one of these floating solar distillation units. But like I said, I gave him a cup of water a day or something like that. And it's a few $100s. Not the best bet for, here we go. Here's a YouTube video. Couple of them. Solar Water Distiller by Desert Sun 02. Okay, he's got some bottles. And then we got Renewable Energy Solar Water Distillers by the YouTube channels New Mexico State ACES. So it's NMSU ACES. Oh, yeah, here we go. So he's got one. Go check that video out. It looks like exactly like what I was envisioning here. So we'll put the link in the chat here. I haven't watched this yet, but that's what I'm envisioning. And I'm sure you could rig up one 3 or 4 times as big as this pretty easily with some scrap materials. Yeah, and there's ways you can do it. Like you can put bags over plants, and plants respirate and release moisture, and it'll collect in the plastic bag. All sorts of stuff you can do. But I'm talking about if you know. Here's the one called Synergy Files, the most efficient passive solar distillation system. I'll put that link in. I haven't watched this one yet, but some research for later for us if you live near. Oh, this guy's got a whole system. Looks pretty cool, but it also looks like it was some NASA shit. but we can watch those later. So they're out there. People have done this, like I suspected. Can't have been the first one to come up with that idea. Navy ships still water from the seawater. Yeah, they probably use energy, not solar. I mean, they have like nuclear reactors on some of these ships or giant diesel engines. What damaging compounds can survive distillation? I know some dissolved liquids like petroleum might. Yeah, and obviously any sort of like alcohol, which is exactly what like moonshine distillers do. Anything that has a higher lower boiling point than water could evaporate off and condense before or along with the water. So if your water has contamination with industrial stuff like that, distillation might not solve the problem unless you do a very brief distillation first and then discard what you have collected because you're collecting all that, and then do a second round of it to try and get the water. But I'm specifically talking about seawater, just trying to get the salt. I'm not trying to, because yeah, there's a lot of industrial compounds, chemicals that can survive distillation, alcohols, things like that, fuels. So a lot of those, though, too, and I've spoken about this before, a lot of those, because they have a higher or lower boiling point, things like that, most of them, well, all of them are of a different specific gravity than water. Most of them will float on water. So what you can do is take that water that's contaminated, potentially, put it in a container that is very, very still, allow everything to separate out, and have a valve in that container that is pretty far from the top, and take water out only from like the middle. And then when you take about half the water out, discard it, start over, then maybe do a double distillation, and this is an emergency situation when you don't have any way to filter it. Sometimes you can try filtering through clay aggregate of some kind, which can soak up oils and things like that. If you're desperate, even maybe like cat litter that doesn't have chemicals in it might help. But best bet is just try to avoid any water that you see that has like that blue or shimmery oil looking stuff in it, or potential industrial contaminants, because it's just really hard to get that stuff out without commercially available filters that are designed for that. And some of those filters will get it out, but will like be really hard on erected filters, and they're just not designed for it. So I wouldn't put them through your RO units or your Haydens or whatever these other filters are. But I appreciate you guys watching. I will remember to check out Patreon to win this nice Fox Edge knife for paid members. And thanks for watching, guys. And more videos coming in the future. And I will talk to you soon. Close this out. And if you